All righty, let's take a look at our grain trade with our quotes provided by Bar Chart. Let's go to corn. On the corn board right now, we currently have nearby December two higher. We're at 661.5, and March corn, up a penny at 664.5 right now. Now, moving on to soybeans, we now have them back higher. They've been on both sides of unchanged today. January soybeans 3.5 higher at 14.40 1/4, and the March contract 3 higher, and we're at 14.44 3/4. Okay, let's move on to wheat. We'll start in Chicago. December has turned lower now. We're 3.25 lower. We're at 7.96. We've been on both sides of unchanged here today in the wheat market. In Kansas City, December down 4.25 at 9.30. Now we're 9 cents off of our earlier high today. And in spring wheat, you have December a penny and a quarter higher, and we're at 9.49 1/4. How about the cotton market? Well, you have December 73 points higher. We're now at 81.89 cents per pound. On the Dow this morning, the Dow Jones Industrial Average 270 higher. We're now at 34,005. So it has cleared the 34,000 mark on the December futures. And the U.S. dollar index down 432 points. We're at 107.30. On the crude oil market, West Texas Intermediate crude, I see we have rolled over to January now, and that is up $1.39. So gaining back some of what they lost earlier. We're now at 81.49 per barrel right now. Time to check in with Ben Hushon of the Mill in Whitehall, Maryland, and see what's going on there. Ben, if you could, give us an update on conditions. Did you finally get done with harvest, or is it still kind of lagging on a little bit?
Good morning, Marlin. Well, I would say we are certainly still lagging on a little bit. We've had we've really had a pretty good harvest week since we talked. Combines continue to roll, and pretty much for the viewers, I sent in some pictures and videos. Corn harvest, about 95% done. You'll ride along a different area and think, well, I think we're about wrapped up, and then you'll run into a pretty good pocket of corn. And on the double crop soybeans, so these would be the ones planted after barley or planted after wheat in July. Those are probably the biggest focus for the growers as we head here towards Thanksgiving and towards the end of November. And there's the double crop soybeans this year definitely missed some rain, so an awful lot of 20 or 30 bushel soybeans, about half of the typical yield. But talked to a couple guys yesterday. Are you going to wrap up for Thanksgiving? And they said likely not. And then I think Tim Ross just mentioned that he's sending us some more rain Friday and Saturday.
So it's kind of rare, isn't it, for you guys to have a drought in that part of the country?
It is, and really it was a very narrow drought, if that makes sense. We've got folks that planted after barley. Barley's harvested 7 to 10 days before wheat. And when the barley was harvested, they planted soybeans, and they're talking about 50 bushels. And then literally 7 to 10 days later, they planted their wheat. And that's about when, planted their double crop soybeans after harvesting the wheat. And that's about when the extended dry spell hit a good bit of this area, which pretty much was the second half of July and most of August. So that's why there are pockets where corn yields are down 10 to 30 bushel, and then some cases more. And then, of course, as I mentioned, double crop soybeans, about half of typical yield in much of the area.
Can you explain for our audience the situation with putting fertilizer on where you are? You have a lot of restrictions, don't you? You can only put it on a certain time of year. And I wondered if that comes into play when it comes to availability and also on pricing here this year.
So it's interesting because the Maryland Nutrient Management Law came into effect in the late 90s. And at that point, they had a hard and fast November 1st, nothing, no phosphorus, no nitrogen or phosphorus could be applied as far as commercial fertilizer. There were exceptions for biosolids and manure. And again, it was all created as one of the answers to trying to protect or clean up the waterways and ultimately the Chesapeake Bay. In more recent years, they have done a nice job at Maryland Department of Ag of, and I should have clarified, this is Pennsylvania ruling. There is no such current rules in Pennsylvania. The Maryland farmers are the ones that have this target date. And what they've done in more recent years, Marlin, is they've pushed that date back. So now you can still apply nitrogen and phosphorus to growing crops. Certainly wheat and barley would fit into that, grass hay, etc. You can apply that now up through the middle of December. So, again, a lot of logic, a lot of discussions, I'm sure a few arguments, and there's been some more agronomic common sense applied to the date. But to answer your question, it's certainly 20-some years ago when it started, really threw the industry and farmers into a panic of how are we going to get all that work done. March 1st is when Maryland farmers can get back in the fields and spread manure and or commercial fertilizer.
All right. Well, hopefully common sense will prevail. Thanks for helping to explain that. I appreciate that. Ben Hushon is with the mill in Whitehall, Maryland. We'll come back in a moment and we'll take a look at our livestock trade right after this.